Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, this Shabbat, this Saturday, has just been designated as a national holiday here in the United States. Yes, we actually have a new national holiday. The first one since Martin Luther King Day was signed into law by President Ronald Reagan. The Senate and the House both adopted the resolution, and Thursday, President Biden signed the bill establishing what is being officially called National Independence Day, Juneteenth. June 19th, 1865, is when Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and informed enslaved African Americans that the Civil War had ended and that they were free. June 19th. Granger's message came more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. One of the most penetrating questions in our country today is, what does justice look like? It's a question that is astonishingly complex and terrifyingly controversial. Why? Listen, President Reagan signed Martin Luther King Day into law in 1983, but it was first observed in 1986. And it was only in the year 2000, hear that, in the year 2000, when Martin Luther King Day was observed in all 50 states. What does justice look like? Though the Senate voted unanimously in favor of the bill, 14 Republican members of the House did vote against it, some claiming that the holiday would be divisive. What does justice look like? Okay, our Sedra is Chukat, beginning with Numbers 19, verse 1 and following. Here in California, we are experiencing a serious drought. Just this week, Santa Monica residents received notice that we should curtail all non-essential use of water during peak hours. You see, there hadn't been enough snow and rain in the winter in our area. The lakes, backed up behind the dams, are experiencing record low levels of water. Fish stocks are in jeopardy. Vast areas of California committed to agriculture are confronting dire threats. Having moved significantly from a 24/7 focus on COVID and acknowledging the hordes of cicadas that have afflicted many states, the shortage of water sounds very much like plague number 3 in what may be another set of 10. What's next? And of course, you'd expect this, our Sedra has a great deal to say about water. Chapter 20, verse 1 reads, "The Israelites arrived together at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there." First of all, it's a pretty abrupt way to conclude her life, but there it was. And then immediately after "and Miriam died," we read, "The community was without water, and the people gathered against Moses and Aaron." And you know that the rabbis just never understood the word coincidence when entering into parshanut, the act of trying to understand a sacred text. No coincidence. Miriam died, then there was a lack of water. Thus was born a wonderful midrash about an abundantly full well of water that accompanied Moses' sister as she moved with the people across the Sinai wilderness. Miriam, the prophetess, was recognized as a source of life. She'd placed her brother, after all, baby brother Moses, in a tiny vessel to float on the Nile River water, saving him from Pharaoh's troops and easing him into the loving care of Pharaoh's daughter. In many contemporary Sedarim, a goblet of water is placed on the table to symbolize Miriam's role in our people's deliverance. Water, Mayim Chayim, water is life. Mayim Chayim, by the way, is also the name of a creative and spiritually powerful organization in Boston devoted to enhancing the experience of those men and women who go to mikveh, a traditional Jewish ritual bath. Water. Water cleanses. Water purifies. Water transforms. Water heals. One need think only of the classic portrayal of the Garden of Eden. Remember that? With 4 rivers flowing from the garden out into the world. The source of life is water. Now, Moses had some mixed experiences with water. When he brought plagues into and out of the Nile River, he was actually battling several high-ranking Egyptian deities associated with water, my favorite among whom was Sobek, the crocodile god. I like that one. By the way, Aswan was the god of flooding. And Aswan was fortunate enough to have a huge dam named after him. It's pretty good. Moses warred against the Nile, and Moses won. To finish matters off, the waters of the Red Sea completed the defeat of Egypt, as we read in Exodus chapter 15. But in the end, water defeated Moses as well. In Exodus 17, in a desert location known as Rephidim, very early in the wilderness journey, Moses was commanded to strike a rock with his staff. That very same staff that crushed and then destroyed Egypt's might. The people were thirsty. They were desperate for water. Moses followed God's instruction, struck the rock, and abundant water flowed forth. But now in our Sedra, Chukat, now, following Miriam's death and the disappearance in the Midrash of her miraculous well, the people cry out again for water. God gives Moses a slightly different command: speak. Speak to the rock, and enough water will be produced to care for all of the people and for their flocks as well. Aviva Zornberg, reading this verse, notes that God was compassionate and gentle here. Water for everybody. It's good for the flocks. It's good. God wanted to tenderly care for the people, but Moses, in a shattering of patience, which perhaps, my friends, can be understood in terms of his being almost 120 years old, Moses hit the rock with his staff. Water flowed, but the people certainly didn't feel God's tender care. God's response was as powerful and as harsh as that staff striking the rock. Moses is given a death sentence. He will not live to bring the people into the promised land. With that blow of Moses' staff against the rock, the fate of the last of Israel's 3 great leaders is sealed. Aaron, already dead. Miriam had just died. And now Moses' fate was sealed alongside the flowing water. Medieval commentators add that by now, in the 40th year, all of the Israelites who were supposed to die before they enter the land, before the people enters the land, except for Joshua, Caleb, and Moses now, all of the others supposed to die did die. Moses was the last. He had conquered water, and now water had conquered him. When the rabbis wanted to understand why the Hebrew word for heaven is shamayim, they would take it apart and say, Shamayim, there is water. That's what heaven's all about, a heavenly gift. If there were waters below and waters above, life could be sustained in the presence of water. In Genesis, by the way, women are always at the well drawing water. Water, women, life. The rabbis did not hesitate to give to Torah all of the life-giving attributes of water. The late chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, Yismar Shorsh, stated unequivocally, in rabbinic parlance, water stands for Torah. That's how he understood Isaiah's words, let all who are thirsty come for water. And believe it or not, this is a side thing, believe it or not, one of the reasons why Torah is read 3 times a week is because it was understood that people could not survive more than 3 days without water. Torah, water, life. Identically, Jews cannot survive 3 days without Torah. So, my friends, we have a drought out there. So we must discipline ourselves to conserve water. And we have a drought of Torah in our lives. And we are urged, drink deeply. Drink deeply. That's it. Happy Juneteenth. See you next week.